Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our 12th installment of the MPF webinar series. We're glad you're here, and we'll begin shortly. Uri, good to see you, my friend. How are you since our last program?
I am great, John. Thanks for having me. Good to see you too.
Likewise. And Michael's out in California. We'll introduce Michael later. He runs a firm called Rimon Law. So how is your week going, Michael?
So far, so good. Thank you very much for having me here.
Well, thank you for being with us, and hopefully this will be the highlight of your week, these next hour and 5 minutes or so, and we're delighted to have you with us. And Chris Taylor, he's here in Atlanta with me, and Chris, thank you again for being part of our programs.
It's enjoyable to be here, but again, it's Chris Wilson of Taylor English. Just to make sure everybody knows who I am. I don't want Mark Taylor to get mad at me.
Everybody. I typed into our slide deck Chris Taylor and was reminded yesterday that it's Chris Wilson. And so here I am again. It's a block, Chris. And so don't hesitate to call me out.
He did. Again, Mark Taylor will get mad at me if I'm trying to pretend to be related to him. So I don't want to do that.
And we do not want Mark Taylor upset with either of us.
That's right.
Wouldn't be a good thing at all. We've got a really great topic today, and as we were preparing and identifying who we might invite to join us, Uri and I got really excited about this because it's something that so many firms are considering. A move to some virtual model, a hybrid model. And we've got two gentlemen who have been there, done that, willing to share their insights, perspectives on how they're moving their firms in this direction with great success. And they were into this long before COVID hit us. So we're delighted to have you gentlemen join us and your willingness to share with us what you've learned as you've worked with the virtual and hybrid models.
Michael, Chris, how popular are you guys since March? Speaking schedule really jammed now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's been the biggest struggle, to be honest with you. Very, inbox has been very full. Let's just put it that way. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah. There definitely have been a lot of folks that want to know a little bit more, whether it's, reporters, or it's, folks like yourselves doing seminars and webinars. And then we're also being inundated by, quite frankly, recruiters and other attorneys who now are experiencing, the enjoyment of working from home. And so they want to know more about firms that maybe have adopted that as their, primary way of operating as a business. And so people are talking. My days honestly are busier since April than probably pre-April.
Interesting. Well, we're glad you took our phone calls and agreed to be with us. So we feel honored to really have you guys with us. I'm looking at the time. We're at the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. And welcome everybody to the MPF webinar series. Today's topic: building the virtual law firm. And we're going to talk about what is a virtual law firm as opposed to a hybrid. Terms are being bantered around pretty freely. So we're going to talk about a myriad of issues, cover a lot of stuff in an hour's worth of time. If you've attended these programs in the past, you probably know me. I've been running managing partner conferences for almost 20 years, often a live program, and we're having to go more virtual with stuff like this. And we did a virtual conference last October.
Fingers crossed, May, right? We got that day lock and loaded.
Fingers crossed. Our signature event is the first Wednesday, Thursday in May here in Atlanta. And, we haven't been able to present it this year, but hopefully, May of 2021, we have a few spots available if folks are interested. As well, if you've attended our programs, you know Uri Gutfreund, and Uri runs managing partner programs in New York, New Jersey, and conference calls. He does twice-a-year conferences in New York, and we became friends 7-8 years ago. and have been presenting these programs since March. So this is our 12th iteration. Uri, good to see you.
Thanks, Sean. Good to be here.
Uri will be doing a virtual program in November in New York. If you're interested, reach out to him. It's complimentary, or reach out to me, and we'll try to get you signed up. What's the date on that, Uri?
John, that's November 19th, 8 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time.
We'll get 100 or so managing partners, and if you're interested, reach out to either of us, and we'll try our best to accommodate your interest in participating. Let's spend a little more time introducing the stars of today's show. And Michael, if I mispronounce your name,
I won't say.
Slap me, Michael Moradzadeh.
Perfect.
How'd I
Pretty
do?
good.
Yes, perfect.
Michael, interesting background. He worked at Ropes and Gray, the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Francisco, some high-tech companies, including Napster over the years. And now he is a founder and CEO of a law firm by the name of Rimon Law. 130 lawyers, 10 countries, 5 continents, and Michael's man in charge overseeing strategic partnerships, recruiting, and when he does find time to practice law, technology, international transactions is where he likes to spend his time. So Michael, delighted to have you with us. We'll ask you to tell us a little bit more about Rimon, what you're doing, and a little bit about your background as we get into the program, but delighted to have you with us.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
And thank you. And as well, we have Chris, let me get your last name right, Wilson. And Chris is the partner in charge of building the hybrid business model at Taylor English, based here in Atlanta, now with 180 plus lawyers, and they've grown exponentially in terms of office locations in recent years. Chris, before he joined Taylor English, was among the early partners at Fisher Broyles, the largest virtual firm back 5-6 years ago, and participated at one of our live programs in Atlanta, created a lot of buzz. People are still talking about it. And we've invited Chris back a couple of different forums to give us his perspective on the business of law, the evolution of law. Chris was as well at Troutman Sanders, recently merged Atlanta-based firm. So Chris, delighted to have you here as well.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. I always enjoy talking with you guys.
Well, we enjoy having you, and that's why we keep having you back. And I have a feeling both of you all will be invited back to future programs. We hope you'll come. So let's move in. When we have our opening remarks, we're going to try to move through this quickly. When you registered, you answered some polling questions. We find that folks love our benchmarking data, so we'll bring that to you as we set the stage for today's session. Then we're even going to invite Chris and Michael to tell us a little bit about their firms, their models, some of the challenges associated with moving in this direction. They've been doing this long before COVID hit. Scattered throughout our hour, we'll be doing some audience polling questions, and you have the ability to type in questions as well. Uri, walk folks through how that works if they want to type in some questions as we go.
Sure. So thanks, John. So as John said, you've given us a lot of questions at registration, and we've tried to include many of them in the program. You also have the ability to ask questions that will aggregate and move towards our discussion time later in the program. So in your GoToWebinar bar on the right side, there's something called questions, and in that box, you want to type that. I'll be monitoring that during the course of the program. So if you see me looking to the side, that's what I'm doing. I'm just getting those questions queued up for our esteemed guests. So looking forward to a great program. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Uri. And you should have been a teacher, I think. You're really good at explaining stuff like that. This will be recorded. We'll have handout materials, distribute that before the weekend. And you can see an archive of all our previous programs on the MPF website. We've covered a lot of topics, from the PPP loan to maintaining productivity in a remote working environment. So there's a lot of stuff there, and we're going to keep humming through the end of the year and present these programs every other Wednesday. The future of law, the law firm of the future. And boy, are things changing fast. When you registered or re-referenced these, we asked a set of questions about partner productivity. Since we've been going to this remote situation in March. And here we see partners remaining remarkably productive. Some not as much, some a little more. Net, partners more productive. We asked, what about associates? Are they maintaining that level of productivity? And here's what you told us. Not as much. Big drop off here in our ability to feed and mentor associates, keep them busy, keep their billable hours up where we'd like them to be. And then we moved on to our support staff. How's been their productivity since we've been working in this remote environment? And here we even see a bigger fall off. So my first question to Michael is, does this data surprise you?
Yes and no. I think it's interesting to see how things are developing. So about 7 months ago, when shelter in place started, I would have been very surprised at how productive people think things actually are. Meaning I would have expected far less productivity because law firms were not ready for this, were not built for this. 3 months, 4 months in, actually, I've been seeing reports that people do feel much more productive, which has been our experience. Once you cut things like commuting time and make meetings more efficient, things get more productive. So it's interesting to see now that we're in the 8th month to see what the long-term trajectory will be. It's very interesting.
It is interesting. These are the partner numbers again. Chris, does this data surprise you? This 130 some mid-sized law firms weighing in. Does that surprise you?
And I guess it also comes down to what is the definition of productivity. My guess is the people answering the questions probably viewed productivity equaled billing hours or revenue.
Yeah.
That would probably be my guess. And
I think you might be right.
Yeah. So how much productivity is or lack of productivity maybe on some of the folks, whether it's associates or staff, is a result of working from home versus maybe there's not as much work as there was pre-COVID. Whereas the partners, maybe they're staying busy because they're absorbing the work that's there because, they don't pass it down to anybody else because they want to get their hours in and they want to show their productivity. So I wonder how much of that kind of falls into that world. And also with regard to the staff maybe being not as productive, I wonder too, is that a result of maybe the attorneys being more efficient with their time and not having to pass things down because they've sort of figured out how to use Word and Excel and Adobe, and they're doing it all themselves now, as opposed to maybe if they were in the office, people were productive because partners were saying, well, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? So I wonder if that plays into that somewhat.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuances to that. And, partners hoarding is an interesting one. Partners hoarding the work that should be passed down. And
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of things going on there. We asked this question. We did a program on maintaining productivity when people work at home. Overwhelmingly, managing partners were telling us that people are goofing off at home. And that's one of the big reasons we need to get them back in the office as soon as possible. But here we are 7 months later with hopefully a little more quantifiable data, which suggests, you know what? People are remarkably productive at home, particularly the partners. Seem to be carrying forth pretty well. Another question
John,
we
just
asked when you registered.
One quick point, John. Also, in terms of tracking time on staff, that is something, John, that a number of firms told us they now do, but had not been doing that previously. So that previous slide when I talked about staff productivity, I think pre-COVID, maybe 10, 20% of firms were tracking their staff's time. Forget if it was effective time, even amount of hours worked. Then we went into this COVID time. People were thinking they're barely working a couple of hours. They started tracking their time. So I think now it could be close to 3/4 of firms, anecdotally, from firms that are now tracking staff time, both out of the office and in the office. And that might be a new thing that's stuck, so that we can sort of track this productivity.
Another question.
If I may add one thing, not to belabor too much on the slide, but I think we also have to remember, John, if we could go back on the productivity slide for one moment, that this is also COVID. So it's not just people working remotely. It's people not having childcare. Right. Their children are at home. Au pairs are not allowed to come in. It's dealing with a lot of issues. So I wonder how much that has that effect that has on productivity. Also, as Chris was talking about with staff, a lot of the staff were meant to work in an office, meaning receptionists, for example. I can't imagine they're very productive right now. So it's going to be interesting, again, to see what happens in the long run here.
I'm wondering how many staff members have au pairs.
Well, I'm thinking more the associates as opposed to the staff. But yeah, no, that's even harder, right? Staff who don't have au pairs, who have kids.
You know, most firms seem to think they're going to shake some support staff as we get through this. Lawyers becoming a bit more self-sufficient, embracing technology, working remotely. And do we centralize functions? Does everybody need a legal assistant? You know, and an acceleration of these trends. Right. Here's a really interesting question that I think is why we're all here today. We asked, as you registered, where are you? And moving toward a more virtual business model. 1 out of 5 firms on today's call said not going there. Half of you said we're thinking about it. So hopefully this will help you through your decision-making process as to how you want to emerge from COVID. Now that everybody's working remotely, that was sort of forced upon us, but bringing them back is not necessarily forced upon us. And, you know, firms are all over the place. 28% of people on the call say, yeah, we're there. We're there. So interesting. Moving right along, just so we can get to our conversation here and hear from you all what you're building. Here's our first audience polling question. We have, I think, 3 or 4 of these embedded in today's session, and this is one we ask every time, and somewhat for the benefit of our panelists. To give them a sense of the demographics represented on today's call, if you all would weigh in and tell us how many lawyers are at your firm. And people are rolling in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here's what we got in terms of demographics on today's call. Just to give us a sense of firm sizes represented all over the map, as you can see. Mostly mid-sized firms. That tends to be our sweet spot as a forum for managing partners. So thank you, everybody, for weighing in. You'll have more opportunities to vote, including my favorite question right at the end. Hurry, don't roll your eyes. Michael, let's start with you. What do you got going on at the Rimon Law Firm?
Sure. Just to give you the history of the firm in 5 bullets here. We started the firm, my co-founder and I, back in 2008 because we saw that there's been a dramatic shift in technology and society, meaning that there was video conferencing, cloud computing that had changed the way we all do business and interact with our friends and family. But law firms had not really accepted that yet. And also that there has been a change in the business structure of firms where origination credit and moving and lateral partner shifts had accelerated. So we decided, my co-founder and I, that this was a good time to leave the white shoe law firm we were at, Ropes and Gray, and to create a new law firm built from scratch as opposed to from the old Cravath model from 100 years ago. So that's the starting point. 2008, we started a purely virtual law firm, meaning we had no offices, meant to streamline the process, increase flexibility, collaboration, and quality while keeping overhead low. What we found about 3 years into it is that at some point, the purely virtual structure really got in the way of doing the high-end work that we always wanted to do, meaning that we needed conference rooms, we needed back office support, we needed to have somewhere for more junior associates to meet with partners, for example. So we went to what we call more of a hybrid approach, which means most of our attorneys do work from home, but we do have office space and more extensive support staff and research tools. We started the firm focusing on technology companies and early stage startups, partly because that was my practice, but also because those companies tend to be the early adopters. And the plan was always to go global. So we built from early stage startups to high finance, to IP litigation, to real estate tax, estate planning, so on and so forth. We expanded throughout the United States. And in the last year and a half, we've really been growing globally. Most recently, we opened up in Bogota, Colombia, but we're also in Germany, in Sydney, in Dubai. We're opening up in London. We're in Tel Aviv. We're in China, and Warsaw, Moscow. I'll just leave it at that. But that's the stage we're at now.
Question: how many of there were you when you started in 2008?
It's a good question. So there were two founders. We started the firm very differently from other firms. Instead of starting off as two guys with practice and then bringing people to support us, we decided we're going to focus entirely on building the platform more like a tech company. And so there were two founders that were still here that managed the firm, and then we had 10 lawyers that were leveraging the platform.
And I'm guessing you were about 8 years old, Michael, because you're a young managing partner. Love to see it.
I have not heard that in a while, but yes, when we first started, yes, that we were young. We were, I guess about 30 at the time.
Wow.
My co-founder is 6 months younger than me, so he always makes me feel old.
Well, congratulations. I mean, what a story, and we'll learn more. But what a story, and starting from scratch, a virtual law firm. And as we were preparing today's comments and getting to know Chris and Michael, what we might talk about, Chris, you said we come at it from a different way at Taylor English. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you're up to at Taylor English. Much written about it.
Sure. So Taylor English was founded about 15 years ago in Atlanta as a low overhead model law firm. Mark Taylor, Joe English, and those guys started Taylor English up coming from big law. They all worked at big law firms, and they were tired of kind of what they saw, inefficiencies, the billing practices that go on as far as having to work so many hours every year, having to bill so much per hour, having to increase your hourly rates every year. That was real frustrating for them. And so they decided to create an alternative. And they came up with sort of a low overhead model law firm, which really means a couple things. Number one, we're not in, you've heard me say this before, we're not in the top floors of the tallest buildings in town, which seems to be where all big law firms want to be for some reason. Doesn't have anything to do with how they operate. It's more ego than anything. But instead of doing that, we're in the outskirts of Atlanta. And we're created, it's just a smaller building. It's a 6-story building, right? I mean, it's not a 60-story building. And so that was one component, is keeping the overhead low. And then additionally, there were a few other things as well. We don't have administrative assistants. We never had a law library. We don't have people walking around watering your plants for you. It's just a much lower overhead. The furnishings, we don't have original artwork on the walls like a lot of these firms do. And when you keep all of the overhead down and keeping a containment on that, then all of a sudden you're not having to bill at big firm rates. Big firm quality, big firm attorneys, but not big firm billing rates. And that's really what they wanted to try to get. And so they grew out of this office in Atlanta up to about 130 attorneys. And then that's kind of where I came into the picture. My background, I started off at Troutman, spent a while there, went in-house at international animal pharmaceutical company for a couple of years, and then ultimately ended up at Fisher Broyles, which at the time was something a little bit different. We were called something different then. I was number 30-something attorney, if I recall. So it was an early adopter. Back then, we were just in Atlanta, and they're the, for those on the conference here today, they're the largest virtual law firm. And by virtual, what I mean is they don't have any office space. Everybody works remotely or from home for the most part, and that includes staff members as well. And so I spent 8 years there, the last 4 of which I was the Atlanta managing partner. And then I had a chance to meet with Mark Taylor, and he and I hit it off. And I sort of pitched him on the idea of, because I knew they wanted to grow, and they wanted to grow, Taylor English wanted to grow outside of Atlanta, but they didn't know how to exactly do that with their low overhead model, because it's very difficult to replicate in other cities, right? Most law firms, they go lease up office space on a, who knows, an 8-10 year lease, and they fill it full of FF&E, and then they hire people to answer phones and this, that, and the other. And then they hope that they find lawyers that generate enough revenue to cover all those fixed costs that they've just incurred. Well, that wasn't Taylor English's desire. And so what we decided on was, hey, why don't we grow outside of Atlanta, but let's do it by having a virtual law firm, or what we call our remote attorney program. And that's so far, yeah, our remote attorney program. And so we started that up about 3 years ago. I guess I've been here 3.5 now, something like that. And we've added folks in a number of different states, and they operate just like all our other attorneys do. I mean, they're just a regular partner inside of our program. It's just that, they're operating, working from home, and our comp model is different. So all of our attorneys, we have a little bit different compensation model than most traditional firms. Ours is formula based, and the formula is slightly different for those working remotely versus those working in the office, because obviously if you're working in the office, you have more overhead that's associated. So you just pay a little bit more for that, for having the office space and all of the furnishings and all that kind of stuff. So it's the same model. You're the same partner. You're in the same program. It's just a different program.
Chris, how many lawyers are in your remote program?
We're 30-something right now. I'm not exactly sure the number. We're in the 30s, probably low to mid 30s right now. My guess is by the end of the year, we'll probably be somewhere between 35 and 40. And I anticipate we'll continue to be adding, I mean, I don't know. We've had a lot of people interested, so I can easily see us adding, 15 to 20 a year on the side, on our remote program side, where we're bringing in, and these are partners, where we're bringing partners in cities that, across the country. And ultimately what we'll get to, and we may talk about this a little bit later, but we believe in office space, and we're a hybrid model, just like Michael mentioned earlier. We're a hybrid model as well. And so I can easily see that even though our main office will be in Atlanta, there's opportunities for us to create mini offices in locations other than Atlanta that will allow our attorneys in those locations to be able to use those mini offices, whether it's for themselves to work out of or to host meetings with clients, educational opportunities, social events. During the political season, every politician wants to come and talk to every law firm and every lawyer, because I think they're, they got their hand out looking for some donations. But yeah, so you got to have an office to have them come do that. So anyway.
Interesting.
We got two. If I could just interrupt, just two quick questions.
Yeah,
when
go for it.
The people who are outside the program, and Chris and Michael, for you too, can they come to the office? We actually got two questions. Paul and Scott both asked the same question, relatively similar question. Can they come to the office? Is it discouraged? How do you handle that?
In my situation, I'll jump in real quick. Yeah, in our situation, it's not discouraged at all. No, I mean, we want folks to come to the office. I mean, look, for no other reason than that helps build the firm culture. It helps folks when you're interacting. Suddenly you find out what other people are doing. Cross-selling opportunities appear. I'm sure Michael will agree with me. The more opportunities that you can get for attorneys to interact with each other, the more synergies that are going to come about. I have seen this occur over and over and over again in my, I guess now coming up on 12 years of working in this model. if you can create, as a law firm, as leaders of a law firm, if you can create those opportunities for attorneys to interact with each other, synergies will happen. And then you're going to have lots of opportunities for cross-selling, and all of a sudden, hey, I didn't know you know so-and-so from this company. Maybe we should go in together and try and bring some new business in. So that's the key. So the fact that we love folks coming into the office because it gives them an opportunity to interact with folks. And we have day offices set up, by the way, in Atlanta for folks in our remote program if they want to come in for a day or two, or they want to use our conference rooms or all that stuff. All that's all free of charge. We don't charge anything.
We talk about the hoteling arrangements. A lot of firms are looking to. You don't have a permanent office, but you check in, and we'll assign you an office. And it might not be the same one you were in last time you came to visit. The hybrid, when we were setting up, the virtual term is thrown about left and right, but really we're talking about a hybrid. And Michael, why don't you lead us through these talking points that we put together as we were preparing today's program. And Chris, will ask you to, comment as well. Hybrid, kind of a blend.
Sure, and I think actually the question that the two gentlemen in the audience put out there, or gentlewomen, I don't know, the audience members put out there is a good transition point for this, because we have no problem with people using the office space. For us, office space is a tool like any other tool, meaning that we have research tools, we use computers, IT, printers. We don't discourage people from using the printer. We also don't really force them to use it, right? If they want to use this electronic documents or paper, we're not here to get in the way. So we think offices have their place. We just don't think they should be prisons, nor do we think that they should be unnecessary overhead. So that brings us to this slide here. So we think that remote work allows for certain attorneys, by the way. I think we're a diverse bunch, right? We attorneys, so not everybody fits into the exact mold, which is again why we have some attorneys who go in every day, and we have more attorneys that almost never go in, and then we have people like me who go in once a week, or did before COVID, to meet with the client, hang out a bit, and leave. So we feel that this flexibility creates greater productivity because less time is wasted on commuting or doing things that the attorneys don't want to do. Again, if they find it more productive, they certainly can go into the office, so we don't see a loss there. We feel that when done correctly, meaning when the firm's structure uses video conferencing and cloud tools like Microsoft Teams, and the culture is built around it. That's the thing. It's not just technology. It's the culture is built around this very basic technology. I don't want to sound like, a 1995 tech company. It's not, all about proprietary software. It's about using things like what we're using right now, but the firm is built on it. So the support staff is using it. They know that they need to be available on video at a moment's notice. They need to be prepared. So the attorneys can just click on their name and video conference with them. They know that the other attorneys are also working in the same system, so they can all go into document live, work on the document together while seeing each other on video. When you do that, and the people are happy to, and the management and the comp structure and all of that is built around that, then yes, it then truly is more productive. Now, the caveat to all this is that junior folks, junior associates, let's say straight out of law school, do tend to need more handholding. The truth is, Big Law is not doing a great job with this anyway, but that, hopefully we can be better than that. So that's one of those places where we think going into an office to mentor, to be with the junior associates, to physically be there working on the document together, has value that it's harder to replicate online. Now, I don't think it's as extreme as some people think. I think a lot of things can be done, especially with younger folks who are more used to technology tools. But again, I think there you need a hybrid approach. Even if you do this purely virtually, you need to take them out to lunch. You need to have a partner that is at least one partner who's really taking responsibility and working with them. It's very hard to do it otherwise. Again, that's one of the reasons we went to a hybrid approach, because once we felt that we needed to bring more junior staff and attorneys, we felt that an office really was more necessary for that.
Michael,
yeah.
Michael, it actually seems the way you've described your firm that even though you're physically not next to each other, you've built all these systems, available time, for example. We're expecting you to be there at a certain time. I guess that's, you've built this culture around being available, even though you're physically not near each other. And that for a lot of firms, that's very strange.
Well put, yes. So I mean, I think we try to keep it, reasonable. For us, quality comes first. Quality is number one. And so I was trained, as I'm sure almost everybody else in this call, if a client emails you, you have to respond within 2 hours. Okay? Now, that doesn't matter if you're in front of your computer, in front of what used to be our Blackberries, but now our iPhones, or if you're in a fancy office, right? The only difference is that 12 years ago, I was sitting in a fancy office at 2 in the morning waiting for the other side to send us docs so the paralegal could print it out and put it into a deal room. And we thought that was terribly outdated with the versions and everything floating around. But no, when it comes to certain things like support staff, certainly IT, they need to be available. And it's not 9 to 5 either, by the way. We have, late night support staff. The sun never shines on the Rimon firm. It needs to be constant. And certainly, again, the attorneys need to be responsive, whether they're senior partners or junior associates. They don't have to take on all the work. We don't have our requirements. We don't have the bureaucracy, but we only bring in attorneys that understand that the client needs to come first. And once you do that and build the culture around it, then you really don't need to force them to come into the office. You don't need to check to see if they're, in the bathroom or something at 9 in the morning. I mean, that's just not necessary.
And let me jump in here. Yeah. So I would, agree with Michael's initial premise that working remotely, not every attorney can do that. Clearly, you're going to have the younger attorneys. I'm in agreement with him that especially the younger associates, they need mentoring, they need training, they need guidance. Most of the time, that can be best done, when there's a physical proximity. But that being said, as Michael mentioned, you can do some of this through video conferencing and phone calls and things like that. All that being said, I still think, and this is why we have a hybrid model where we've got, I don't know, maybe 40 of our attorneys or associates, and they work out of the Atlanta office. I typically am not looking to hire associates to work remotely unless I'm bringing in a partner who wants to bring an associate with them. And then I always ask them that they need to be responsible for that associate's mentoring and training and development, because it's not fair to the younger attorney to sort of be stuck as an island in the middle of, Iowa, let's say, and not have any interaction with anyone. They're going to stagnate and not grow. So I think the hybrid approach is better if you're going to have associates. Now, there's some firms out there, Fisher Broyles being one of them, who don't have associates, and so they don't have any physical space, and so they figure then that works for them, and that's okay. But I would tell you, if you are going to have associates, I do think you need to have some physical space. I also think that not every attorney wants to work remotely. Now, all of us are currently doing so, and I've heard from many of my partners who have easily adapted to the lifestyle. They initially didn't think they would like it, which is why they joined Taylor English and worked out of the offices in Atlanta. And I have heard since then that since we're all now home, they really like it and want to know how they can get into my program as opposed to the other one. But that's above my pay grade on that. But
Interesting.
But there's still people that don't like it, right? Whether it's because they have pets that bark every time Amazon Prime drops something off, right? Or it's because, like Michael said, the kids are running around, just because of school or whatever. Or maybe, they don't like their spouse and they don't want to be near their spouse that much. So I don't know. but you know, not everybody fits this model. And when I'm talking to recruits, you know, I try to that's one of the things I try to determine early on in talking with people is, does it fit you or not? So as a law firm, if I'm out there as a law firm right now, and the people that are on this call, you know, just know, you know, look, it may not fit every one of your attorneys to work remotely, but my guess is that it will fit a number of them. And so then, okay, well, is that an option you should look at? Should you look toward creating something that benefits those people, whether it's attorneys or it's paralegals or whatever? Should you look to do that? And, you know, my answer is absolutely, because I think the demand is there. It was always there. It was just that lawyers are incredibly scared of change. And as a result, they were very, you know, wary about dipping their toe into working remotely. But now that everyone has been forced to do it, a lot of people like it. And so again, if I'm one of the managing partners on this call and I'm hearing, I'm looking to figure out, okay, well, how can I do this? I think there was what, 20 or 30% of the folks that responded said that they were not looking to do
About
anything
20%
like this.
do not intend
I
to
think,
incorporate any virtual element into the model going forward.
I mean, that's fine if that's what, I mean, you know, it's your company and that's what you want to do. But I would tell you that I think you're not going to be a multi-generational law firm if you do that, because that's not the future. And if that doesn't matter to you, then that's fine. But if you want to be a multi-generational law firm, you have to adopt some element of working remotely into your platform, because people want to do it. Younger folks are gravitating towards it and want to work at law firms that make it part of the everyday, not make it some sort of special dispensation by the executive committee that one day a week you're allowed to work from home, or whatever some of these firms out there do. That's just crazy. I mean, look, lawyers are adults, we're professionals. And especially if you align compensation to this, people aren't goofing off watching Netflix all day. I mean, it just doesn't happen ever.
Let me jump along here. Boy, there's so much to cover. I knew we would not be for lack of conversation. We'd have a couple of polling questions. You know, the biggest pushback Uri and I are hearing as to why firms don't want to go there is the culture. We can't retain our culture of collaboration remotely, and the mentoring and training of our young lawyers.
We'll get into some detail. We'll get into some details, but what we've heard from Michael and Chris, I think they work more deliberatively on their culture than many firms do, John, in the brick and mortars.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. At our virtual conference a couple of weeks ago, Chris, you were there. We asked everybody. We had 190 some at this forum, and how important is culture? Extremely important. And, you know, we can retain a collaborative culture remotely. It's just different. I'm going to pause here with a polling question. I love the polling question. So does our audience. And, you know, 80% of you say you're going there. And what are the primary reasons you all are considering a virtual model, a hybrid model? And click all that apply to this answer. And if y'all would go ahead and vote in, I'm 10, 9, 8. People are voting slowly on this one. 6, 5, 4. We got about 2/3 in. 3, 2, 1. Chris Wilson, what do you think will be our number one answer here from our crowd assembled today in terms
Lower
of
rent.
the number one reason?
Lower rent.
Michael?
Lawyers want it.
There you go.
Wow, good panel. Look at that.
You hit
close.
that one
Right
close on the head. I'm going to go with one more polling question. And as you contemplate this virtual element, hybrid element to your firm, who are you talking to within the firm? Is it a conversation among the owners? Are you engaging your non-equities and associates, seeing where they want to be, how they want to work? Your executive director, your support staff, does it matter what they think? Are you talking to your clients? And as people are waging, Michael, let me ask you, do clients care that a lot of your people are working remotely and that you started as a virtual law firm? Is that a selling point? Is it a concern for clients?
Yeah, good question.
clients
So
care?
generally they don't care. No. So the 12 years ago, maybe we tried to make it more of a selling point and there were more questions. Now, quite frankly, many industries, high tech, high finance, have gone semi-virtual long ago anyway. So their concern is not that. Their concern is security. Their concern is, and actually, this is a concern many law firms should have, because law firms are the #1 target for phishing emails and viruses, because they're so easy and vulnerable. So our clients are far more concerned about IT infrastructure and support, and they're very happy with it, which is why even banks that have the most strict standards around this and IP litigation that we do that has very strict standards around it hire us. So no, I have not seen any problems there at all.
Chris, how are your clients responding to this virtual program at Taylor English?
I mean, it doesn't matter. Maybe 10 years ago, perhaps some clients at maybe banks or some sort of old-fashioned type of business might have cared.
Estate planning clients.
Maybe, yeah, but nobody cares. I mean, first of
Right.
all, nobody knows. Well, nobody knows. I mean, if I'm communicating with a client, most of the time it's through email or a phone call, or I text with some of my clients. So that's the communication. They have no idea where I am when I'm responding. So where I work physically is irrelevant to the clients. All they care about is, are you doing good work for me? Am I getting value for it? Are you responding to me promptly on time? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that clients care about. Where you are is really irrelevant. I always have believed, even pre-COVID, it was irrelevant, because half of the clients that I have, they have people that work remotely. Maybe they have a salesperson.
Right.
Or a project manager who happens to be in another location, another city or state or whatever. So I don't think that matters. Clients don't care, and they really don't care now. I mean, obviously, so many of us are working remotely, even non-lawyers, and so it's irrelevant. And just anecdotally, I can tell you, when I was with Fisher Broyles, we had one of our attorneys, he didn't tell anybody, but he went over with his wife and spent 6 months in Italy. And he worked remotely from Italy. And he came back. No one knew he had been gone. None of his clients knew. None of the partners or none of us knew. He just wanted to test it out and see if it would work. And of course it worked. And so he had a fantastic 6 months in Italy. He worked part of the day, and then he and his wife were able to enjoy the amenities over there. So it just doesn't matter, and it's just kind of old-fashioned. And by the way, this poll, I just want to mention, John, the poll that just came up here.
Yes.
This does not surprise me at all that the managing partners that are on the call here are talking to the equity partners. And
I was going to ask you, should we be talking to our support staff and our associates as we consider where we want to go with our model going forward?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking to the other
equity,
if you're talking to other equity partners, it's just going to be sort of like, this little echo chamber, right? I mean, you're talking to the people that are just like you, who are probably of the same, age group and experiences. And okay, I would tell you, this is just my experience in dealing with recruiting over the past 8 years. Most of the time, older attorneys struggle as opposed to younger attorneys in a transition, going from working in an office to working remotely or working from home. And the reason is because they're just not, older attorneys are stuck in their ways. I spoke to someone earlier today who has spent 45 years working at AmLaw 200 firms. And he had he had a difficult, he doesn't know how to do it. He was confused on just a simple thing like well, how do I get my FedEx packages out, my overnight stuff? I don't know how to do that. What do I do? And I'm not belittling him or anything like that. It's just that, usually the younger folks are going to be more comfortable with change, more comfortable with technology. Older lawyers are stuck in their ways. So if the managing partners on the call are just talking to people that look exactly like them, I wonder what kind of quality feedback they're getting.
To be fair, John, I think that polling question, you weren't very fair to our audience. You only let them choose one.
Right.
And
I only had
of course,
5.
they
I
gotta
can
talk
only
to their
have
equity
5
partners. The equity partners are the owners. You have to talk to them. But
No, we
I'm
had to
assuming
click all that
everybody-
apply was
John, I don't think that worked. We got some feedback that did not work.
it did.
So it did not. So let me turn it to Michael and Chris. So John mentioned it. So a lot of firms, or I should say, as you know, the vast majority of firms on this webinar, they are not virtual. So now they're doing this change and transition the firm. How should they go about doing this? If they want to get to a hybrid model, how do they? Do they say this is what we're thinking about doing? What do you think?
Yeah, well, again, I think, I'm not going to tell our esteemed audience here how they should run their business. They all have their own clients and everything. So I don't know about your specific details, but I personally,
If they want to go to a hybrid, how should they do it?
The way we started is first do market research, see what your clients are already doing. This has been a great, as Chris has said, this has been a great opportunity to do some scientific testing without much risk because you have no choice. So how much has this really affected your attorneys? This is the worst case scenario, right? To be clear, you were not prepared for this. You were forced into this in time of disease and horrible things going on. So this is the worst it gets, right? And so now that you've experienced this, I think, start having a conversation with everybody on that list. Everybody on that list should be part of the conversation. And I think the way that you ask the question is respectfully, as I'm sure they would, ask your biggest clients, is this a concern for you? What about this would be a concern for you, if anything? My guess is that the vast majority of them will say, well, what if I need to see you face to face? And you say, oh, no problem, we got whatever. And I think you'll be surprised by the answers in a very positive way.
And sorry, everybody, on that glitch on the polling question. That should have been a click all that apply, not a click one. And so, yeah, our results didn't come up quite as we would have wanted them to. I got another polling question to toss out there, and it's amazing how time flies. We're down to 12 minutes left. And that is your concerns about moving to a more hybrid model. And here, I believe you can click all that apply. What are your biggest concerns is what we ask, not your firm's biggest concerns, your biggest concerns as a firm leader as we contemplate a remote working model of some sort. And I'm going to ask Chris Wilson. I almost said Taylor, but that was intentional. What do you think people are going to tell us here is their top concern?
I don't know. That's a good one, because I think all of the options here are ones that I've heard before. So I'm just going to go with the first one of lost productivity, but I could see where a lot of these are going to be, because I've heard these as reasons before from folks.
Lost productivity. And Michael, what do you think where we're getting pushback on considering this?
I agree with Chris. It's a tough one. I would say quality control if I had to choose one.
Quality. Uri, I'm going to ask for your prediction too before we shut this down and reveal.
I think it's the firm, the collaboration, and the mentoring. I know I gave you two, but.
And here we go. It's that culture. It's that mentoring. And there's the pushback from the seniors. Altman Weil does a law firms in transition report every year, and they ask, what's the biggest impediment to change and innovation at your law firm? It's the senior partners, as we've talked about. Here's some data, folks, to bring to your senior partners that might open their minds a bit to why this might be a way to go.
Let me jump in, John, real quick on the answer there of the concern about lack of collaboration or loss of culture.
Let me pull that up again.
I've got to say, that simply, I'm not sure why there's the concern there. Now, I guess perhaps it's possible that the folks on the call today attribute their specific culture to the fact that they all are working in the same, historically have all worked in the same office building. So maybe that's kind of what they're doing, but I don't know that that's not the determinant of culture. I mean, the determinant of culture is how people interact with each other. And we're still interacting today, whether it's through this or it's through phone calls or it's through emails and texting. I mean, it's about doing it, right? And making sure you communicate. And I tell everybody this, and it's like a good marriage, right? I mean, you got to communicate with each other. And if you communicate really well with each other, then you're going to say, oh, well, we have a good culture. And so it's just people being aware and doing that. And as far as cross-selling goes, I think I'm assuming that's where collaboration comes in. It's hey, my client's got an issue and I can't figure it out. I need to bring in my labor and employment attorney to help out. I mean, if you align the financial incentives to incentivize the attorneys to collaborate with one another instead of trying to do it all themselves, then that's going to happen. I mean, that's how we've done it. We align the financial incentives for our partners to not do everything, but bring in those specialists, and it happens day after day. And I've got statistics that back that up. So it works. So anyway, I would say that the mentoring and training, I think that's fair, but the top one, I'm not so sure about.
Beautiful.
I think it's a fear.
We are coming down to the wire. Time flies. Uri, questions from our audience? Anything we want to put out there?
Sure. I mean, we have, I'll give you sort of a blitz of a couple of questions. We have quite a lot. Chris mentioned, this is from Ian, Chris mentioned the idea of alignment compensation to working from home. So it sounds like you're alluding to a different compensation plan, Chris. Could you expand on this?
Yeah.
Particularly for associates, is there a difference?
It's formula. So it's formula based. And okay. We don't have a committee or an individual who determines what everyone makes. Instead, what we have a very specific formula that applies equally to everyone, both partners and associates. And your role that you play, whether you're, and the terminology folks might be familiar with, are finder and grinder, or client originator and working attorney, you get assigned certain percentages, and that's just how it works. And the firm obviously is going to take some portion to cover their costs as well. So when the revenue comes in, then it's apportioned according to that, as opposed to a committee or an individual saying, okay, you get $150,000 a year and you get $200,000, and so on and so on. And I think if you align it, so therefore your productivity is going to be aligned with the formula, and that's how you get paid. If you're just getting paid a salary of $200,000, and there's no sort of tie to your productivity, then I guess there could be an issue there. That's why we don't do that.
And do you compensate, Lisa asked this question, do you compensate those lawyers who are in the office training associates? Because remote lawyers benefit from that too. So is there an extra compensation if you're doing the training of associates and mentoring if you're in the office, which the presumption of the question is if you're in the office, you're doing more of that. I'm not sure you'd agree with that, but if that's true, do they get compensated for that? And do you charge the people who are outside the office?
I would say that's probably not necessarily true, because there are lots of our attorneys who work outside the office who work with the associates in the office. And so while they're working on, deals, people are being, compensated and trained during that time period. But there's not a direct compensation for any attorney for training, whatever that might look like. It's just that the attorney who's being trained, the associate, is billing their time, and then they're getting paid for it. Now, what it might be is that the partner is writing the time off so that the client's not paying for it, and then that attorney is absorbing that cost. But it's sort of like anything. If you're training somebody, it's because you're hoping that they're going to start doing more work for your client, and then ultimately you'll be able to leverage off.
You know, I'm looking at the clock, and we've got
So
4
many
minutes
questions.
left, and some housekeeping announcements. But first, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. We could go on for half the day here and are just scratching the surface, all the issues associated with this really important topic. So I think we'll be delivering more of this programming. And, you know, I think we could isolate compensation and talk about that. And we could isolate associate development and training and talk about that. How do we do that remotely? So thank you guys for being with us. Really thought-provoking conversation, and we appreciate your willingness to be with us and share. And again, thank you. Let me, this is a polling question that I like to ask from time to time. And we're not going to cast opinions, but we asked this question at our virtual conference. And that is, who do you think is going to win our upcoming election here in the U.S.? Not who you're going to vote for. Who do you think is going to pull it out? And you got one choice. And the results are coming in. And boy, people are eagerly voting on this one. And 5,
Before
4,
we reveal,
3,
before you reveal this answer, John, I just want to
2.
point out that in 2016, Managing Partner Forum got this one right.
We
in
did. We
2016.
asked this live.
One of the few polls. One of the
in
few
May,
polls that got it
before
right.
Trump was even considered a legitimate nominee for the Republican Party, and our managing partners thought Trump was going to pull it out. Which, boy, good bellwether audience here. Uri, your prediction? Come on. Come on.
Who will win?
Who
Joe
do you
Biden.
think
I
will
think
win?
the group's going to choose Joe Biden. Wow. Pretty close.
It's a lot closer than when we asked the question at our virtual conference. This was after the first debate, but before President Trump was diagnosed with COVID. We asked this question, and it looks like it's tightened a little bit among the law firm leaders. So it's going to be interesting couple of weeks. And our next program, in fact, will be the day after the election. And we're going to be talking about KPIs. And what metrics should managing partners be paying attention to looking forward in a post-COVID environment? And so people think of financial metrics, but we'll be drilling down on that topic. KPIs, key performance indicators, what managing partners should be looking to measure the performance profitability of their.
John, I
Yes.
would just gander that Michael and Chris would opine on KPIs. How important are measuring your KPIs as you manage your firms?
We probably have a whole different type of metric we look at than what sort of the traditional bricks and mortar law firms look at. So yeah, I mean, they're different. They're important to stay on top of, but they're going to be different. We just look at, I don't know. I'll let Michael answer for himself.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe I'll leave this as a teaser for our next conversation. but I think it's one piece of good data that goes into the analysis of the health of the firm. But I think there are other ways to do it. I agree.
Just to close it out, Uri, thank you, my friend, for sharing the labor, putting this together, and being with us this afternoon. We're out there, our website. We try to collect a nice set of resources for managing partners, mid-sized firms, put out a weekly newsletter. We got our webinar series coming along. So please participate. As Uri mentioned early, we got an in-person program. Hopefully, it's on the calendar, May 5 and 6 here in Atlanta. There are a few places with the date changes. If you're interested in participating in that program, please reach out to us. Listservs, conference calls. We're trying to be a resource, a community for managing partners, firm leaders in a rapidly evolving marketplace for legal services. So Uri, you've got resources, conference coming up in November. So reach out to Uri if you're interested in learning more about his programs, and we got our stuff going on as well. Thank you again, Michael. Thank you again, Chris. We really appreciate your time with us, and everybody will be sending the recordings, the handouts before the weekend. So be on the lookout for that.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great rest of the
Thanks.
week. And thank you again, everyone, for being with us.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.